They were in the center of a storm of sorts, a flurry of instructions and running feet and nervous apprentices being shooed into place. In less time than she had imagined possible, they were in the assigned position beside the Oster booth, a discreet pace or two behind the senior Osters, hat straight, hands folded, respectful and silent. Before she slid into place, Lilith had dared a glance at the end of the alley, across from the great pavilion of the Queen. She had seen Raziel there, her hair a crown of gold in the last rays of the sun, and the soldiers ranked behind her with the tribute boxes at their feet. Something shivered over her skin, a wind that did not stir the banners, and then she heard the sound of hooves on the hard-packed ground and the jingle of harnesses. It was hard to breathe, as if the air had grown too thin, and there was a spice in it, a fragrance that it seemed perilous to inhale. She was grateful for the black brim of her hat that shadowed her eyes and let her cast a careful glance upwards while seeming to stare obediently at the ground. She knew Tova was doing the same thing, and every other apprentice along the alley. The first horses passed before she could quite focus on them, and she saw only a blur of high-stepping, coppery creatures with black waves of mane and faceless figures on their backs. The riders that followed had faces, though some of them were half concealed by helms of hammered gold or veils in gossamer silk. As each passed, she could only add another brief impression to her image of the Fae. They came in many hues, and their garments were a shifting tapestry of fabrics and jewels. She knew that their features must vary, knew some were male and some were female, knew some had beards and some were smooth-shaven, but it seemed as if her eyes could not see any one of them clearly, and so they ran together, becoming one face, beautiful and remote as a plume of snow on the top of a mountain. Her head spun with the sight of them, and she felt Tova's fingers dig hard into her elbow. Then the last of them had passed, and she could breathe again, the air once more holding only the smell of the tents and the mountain. "Are you all right?" Tova asked, and she nodded. Dara Oster was gone, following the procession of Fae towards the pavilion, and the 3 apprentices crept to the edge of the tent. Hazlitt, left to watch the wares and the junior Osters, let them edge their way around the ropes and poles to a better vantage point. The Fae had assembled before their queen's pavilion, in ranks 3 deep, forming a corridor that led straight to where Raziel waited. The horns sounded again, 3 notes that lilted like a song through the twilight, their echoes a perfectly harmonized refrain. Lilith shivered, every part of her skin suddenly too tight, and her heart beat so hard she thought it must be visible beneath all the layers of her robes. To her astonishment, the Fae horses bent their beautiful, impossibly thin legs and knelt like courtiers. Their riders flowed from their backs and bowed in waves of silk and velvet. Beyond them, Lilith saw the panels of the pavilion draw back. Suddenly she wanted to close her eyes, to turn away, and not look at the things she knew must emerge. There were creatures one was not supposed to look at for fear of losing one's soul. The fairy queen must surely be one of those. She remembered Vasha's story of Tam and Jazaret, a woman it hurt her eyes to look upon. But she could not move, not even to blink. At the mouth of the pavilion, the fairy queen appeared. In the fading light she burned like a star, cold and white and perfect. Her hair was a fall of untouched snow, and her dress was sculptured ice. Lilith could not see her features clearly, only the shadows of her eyes and the line of her mouth. The last echoes of the horns faded. The queen turned and vanished back into her pavilion. Behind Raziel, the soldiers lifted their burdens and followed their Sidiana into the black mouth of the fairy queen's realm. Lilith blinked, took a breath, and fainted at the foot of the Oster tent.